My name is Ryan Lee, and I want to talk to you today about how your perception of how you feel a true crime case is can change based on social media and the things you hear, truths, rumors, and how it absolutely has, I don't know if it's changed or what it would be with my feelings on the Gypsy Rose case, but I have a pretty unique perspective because I started off a very staunch Gypsy supporter, which I know is a very big surprise to a lot of my TikTok followers. I gained thousands of followers for my anti-Gypsy content after falling in with the former PR person for the Blanchard family, and I learned a lot of things that I did not know, which changed my mind on a lot of aspects. And then I learned things after the fact that changed my mind a little bit another direction after that. Some things you may not know about me is I am a person who has been very invested in true crime for many, many years. One of my favorite cases is West Memphis 3, as a lot of my followers know. And I have followed many true crime cases, and of course, Gypsy Rose was one of them. I was there in real time. I was 30 some years old. Gypsy's only 10 years younger than me. And in 2015, news breaks and there's a missing girl, and then she's found, and this shaved head little girl, what we thought was a little girl, shows up, and she's been a victim of Munchausen by proxy, and she escaped her evil mother by doing the only thing she knew. And she took a plea deal because her abuse was so extensive. They felt so bad for her that she went away for a whopping 10 years, while the male counterpart got life in prison. And for years, and I mean years, when I talked about this case, it was me supporting Gypsy. And I mean, I don't even mean like kind of supporting. I mean like wholeheartedly pro-Gypsy. I would go on TikTok lives talking about how glad I was she was getting out because she never deserved to spend a day in prison. It was self-defense. She was doing all she knew to get out of a horrible situation. She was horribly abused. She'd been tied to a bed and beaten and controlled and made to sit in a wheelchair and told she was sick when she wasn't, and what a horrible life she led, and this horrible monster, and how did she have any choice at all? And I had all of that, all the same things that most of you still think to this day, to be honest. But now, with everything that's gone on in the last 4 months of my life, with meeting Fancy Maselli, as she calls herself, the former PR person for the Blanchards, and then having a brief, bizarre friendship with Christy Blanchard, what I know, what I think I know, what I feel on this case is so all over the place, and so just, I mean, I can't even explain to you. Some days I think, she's absolutely guilty, and some days I wonder, is she guilty? And I'm going to tell you how I got there and why. So I'm sitting on a park bench in Kentucky, and I was going to go for a walk, and I've tried to film this numerous times, but there's lawnmowers, so I'm going to sit over here on this bench in the shade and try to stay away from a lot of the sounds except for these birds. So at the end of December of 2023, Gypsy was getting out, and I had started talking on lives how excited I was. She was getting out. She never deserved to spend a day in prison, and that I hoped, her life was great and everything would go good, and was very, very happy she was getting out. And I was scrolling my TikTok feed, and this woman came on my screen, and she seemed very knowledgeable, very professional, talking about how she was the leading expert in the case. She had spent years with the family. She was a family spokesperson for them, and she had vast amounts of knowledge when it involved Gypsy Rose. She had things like the medical files, and she could prove that there was no Munchausen by proxy, and that the family was just a bunch of cons, and this was all a big just distraction. That was her big thing, was it's all a distraction, which sometimes I wonder if it was, and sometimes I wonder if she is as insane as I believe, or if she was driven to insanity. I don't really know at this point. I can't even begin to guess, because I know with the short time that I was involved with the Blanchards, I know how crazy it made me feel. And she was involved with the family for 3 or 4 years, and then a bunch of really bad backlash for like 3 after that. But this isn't about that necessarily. What I want to talk about is how a person can change their mind based on learning things and misinformation and hidden information. So I started talking with Fancy. We'll call her Fancy, even though that is not even remotely her legal name, but that is the name she chooses to go by. So for this, I will speak of that. I started speaking to her in the middle of January, and we became friends really quickly, and we talked a lot on the case. She brought me on as a person to help her finish her documentary, to do podcasts, to expand her TikTok account, and we would go on lives and create content based a lot on Gypsy Rose and her knowledge and her personal experience with them. And when I became involved, it was strange for me because she was extremely anti-Gypsy and I was extremely pro-Gypsy. And by the time I was done with her, and by the time I walked away, I was also very anti-Gypsy because of things that, not only that she had told me, because I don't want people to think that like she just filled my head with a bunch of stuff. What she did was filled my head with a bunch of stuff I did not know, that was not made public, because they wanted this picture of this victim. They wanted this picture of this poor innocent girl and pity wah wah whatever. And so a lot of things didn't get brought out. A lot of details that should have been brought out never got brought out, and these came to light, and she told me about these things, and I started to research myself, and my research gave me more questions than it did answers. For every answer I got, 3 more questions popped up. But what I saw was the story that the media had been feeding us of this poor innocent girl with a horrible mother who deserved to die was not even remotely accurate. That we were being fed, honestly, just drivel in hopes that we would support this girl who, in all actuality, had her mother murdered for no reason other than her own selfishness. So you ask me what changed? Why did I change my stance? I get asked that a lot. Well, how did I go from pro to anti for the time that I was what you would consider anti? And when I say anti, let me clarify a few things. A lot of my TikTok content definitely threw the anti vibe out. And what I want to say is, for me, going from being so pro to even questioning, it did look like anti. But what I've always wanted to know is the truth. Whether it led me to think she was guilty, whether it led me to believe she was innocent, it didn't matter. I wanted the truth. And along the way, every time somebody told me something was the truth, whatever truth was in there was always some lie. I've never, and whether I spoke with Fancy, whether I spoke with Christy, for every truth there was a lie, for every answer there was a question, and to this day I still don't even know how I feel about it, to be honest. But I have a lot of questions, and I had a lot of questions, and it based a lot in the things that Fancy had told me about how there was no medical abuse. She had the medical records. I had the drive for the medical records. I had my hands on everything that Fancy had accrued in 7 years, including the medical records, which, believe it or not, I never even actually opened up and looked at. I mean, Whether or not I think they're relevant now, I don't know. But given the chance, I never even looked at them. I looked at the crime scene photos, and I looked at some emails that Nick had exchanged with a girlfriend, and some of the letters were damning to him and some were very normal. And I came in this very, very pro-Gypsy, anti-Nick, and then I ended up anti-Gypsy, pro-Nick, and now I stand somewhere in the middle on both of them, to be honest. When given more information on the fact that, you know, she knew she could walk, she knew what she was doing. There was men before Nick that allegedly she had tried to get to do her bidding, that she knew exactly what was going on, that she had these personas, these evil personas. And there was a file put in that was never saw in court, obviously, of her speaking as one of these personas, talking about killing and murdering, and this was not some sweet, innocent girl by any stretch of the imagination. When I found out that Dan, the one that supposedly she was tied to the bed over when she tried to leave, when I found that he had actually been at a deposition for Nick's trial or rehearing or whatever it was in 22, and he had talked about the fact that Gypsy had turned him into role playing when she said that that was Nick. There was always he said, she said. There was never any truth to anything. And when I started thinking about, well, if this could be a lie, and if this could be a lie, what if it's all lies? And I saw a medical record that absolutely said that her chained to the bed theory is allegedly not able to have been done. I saw the medical record with my own eyes. I did the research. I found the paper from VisionCon. The paper from VisionCon was in, I want to say, February 17th, 2011, that she went to VisionCon. And she tried to run away within a night or two of VisionCon and was chained to the bed for allegedly 2 weeks. Well, February has 28 days. And she was at a doctor's visit in March of that year, March 2nd of that year, which was about 10 days later from the date that she would have been chained to that bed for supposedly 2 weeks. And in that doctor's report, where she wasn't even tied to the bed for 2 weeks because she was there in 10 days, but there was no ligature marks, there was no bruising. It said that she checked out, she was fine, everything was good. She was there for some checkup of something not even related to what was going on. Nothing was said at the doctor's. There was no bruises, there was no ligatures, there was nothing. And I thought to myself, the biggest story, the biggest thing that we've always been told to make this story believable is, oh my God, she was chained to a bed, her laptop was smashed. What a life this girl led. And I'm looking at a paper that says to me, this could not have happened. I found VisionCon's papers. I have VisionCon's papers from when they happened, and it was February 17th of 2011, I want to believe the date was. And the medical record was from March 2nd. Do the math. She was not tied to the bed for 2 weeks, and if she was, it was not to the extent that she had any ligatures or bruising. So did it happen? And then I looked at the crime scene photos, and it doesn't even look like there's anywhere to be tied. I looked at the bedposts. I looked at all of it, and her story changed numerous times. In an interview with Dr. Phil, in another interview, in her book, it went from she was chained to her bed to she was chained to her mother. They used a dog leash. They used a chain. The story changed. And I'm not saying that with trauma, you can absolutely black things out. You can absolutely black things out with trauma. People do it all the time. Or you remember things in extensive detail. But what you don't do is change your story 25 times. You just don't. It doesn't make sense to me. And it seemed like every time the story got more embellished and harder to hear and harder to stomach and worse. And And when that happened, it made me realize that there was so much going on that I did not know. And Fancy was spiraling from her obsession with not only Gypsy, but Christy Blanchard and her business partners, and how everybody had done her wrong. And she's filling my head with all sorts of stuff. And I, admittedly, am extremely gullible. I like to believe that people, I know in my head, I don't trust people as far as I can throw them, but for some reason, when I get in with people, I want to believe that they are accurate, that they are true, that they are believable. And so everything that she said, I believed, with no proof, no evidence. I mean, I had these records in front of me, but what did they show really? What did they really show? And as much as she claimed to be a leading expert, it was all theories. Everything was a theory with her. She never had any evidence to be had. It was, I have this, I have that. Okay, but what does it show? Well, my theory is, well, your theory doesn't hold weight. Your theory doesn't hold weight. But the more that I researched and the more questions that popped up, the more I started questioning everything that I had ever been told about this case. And I swung wildly in the other direction and started, with basically, this can't be true, and that can't be true, and this can't be true, and that can't be true, and I have this, and I have that. And I'm sure that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I've come to realize now that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I'm not pro, I'm not anti, I'm not anything other than pro-truth. But what I can tell you is that by associating myself with somebody who was anti, and not knowing the people involved, it was super easy to become anti. And then, after I fell out with Fancy, Christy Blanchard contacted me. And we struck up what I thought was a friendship. We talked on the phone, we texted, and as long as I was doing my due diligence as a friend, that's all that mattered. I, out of respect to the family, stopped doing anti-Gypsy content. Whether that was a ploy to get me to do it, I don't know. Her reaching out to me 2 days after I stopped speaking with Fancy, was it timed? Was it coincidence? Was it a ploy? I don't know. I will never know the intention behind it. She came across very genuine, very sweet, very caring. We would talk on the phone for hours. We would text. And she seemed like a very genuine person. And I went on TikTok and I defended her. I defended her greatly. I got a huge target on my back because of how much I defended her and went against Fancy and showed how absolutely unhinged Fancy was and how Christy was this great person. And she was extremely genuine. And she was telling me things behind the scenes about the situation, about that, Dee Dee was super controlling and this happened and that happened. And so then I started to go, okay, well, what if all the things I figured out were just me wanting to find an issue? What if there is more to it? These are real people. These are real circumstances. I feel like Judge Judy right now. These are real. The people are real. The cases are real. But it does. Once you have a human aspect to that, once you have faces and people and voices on the phone and texts exchanged, you begin to see that a case is so much more than just what's on paper. That just the facts and the evidence have a face to them, which doesn't make them any different in facts and evidence. It just makes them more different to comprehend, I guess. So people accused me of changing my mind when I started talking to Christy, and that's not accurate. I always maintained, and I still maintain, that if she's out, he should be out. If he's in, she should be in. I maintain the fact that I think that she got off too lightly. She orchestrated a murder, and that is a fact. For whatever reason, she orchestrated a murder, and I don't believe that 10 years, 8 that she served, is a significant punishment enough for that, especially when somebody else is in for life. The emails that I read of Nick's changed my mind on him. I was very pro. I was very, Gypsy used him and persuaded him, and he was just a pawn in her game. And he was, that's a fact. She did absolutely sway him and tell him whatever. And I'm sure he wholeheartedly believed he was saving her. From the stories that she told him, I wholeheartedly believe that. And I was very pro Nick and really wanted to see him get a new trial. And I still do want to see him get a new trial. I want to see him have a fair trial and a fair sentence, and maybe even have a chance to get out someday. Do I believe that today or tomorrow is that day? No, I do not. I read emails in between him and a ex-girlfriend, and some of them are frightening. I'm not gonna lie, some of them are frightening. But at the same time, he was being provoked, and Fancy was pulling the strings. And people can argue this all day long, and you can believe me or not. I know what I read, I know what I've heard, I know what I've seen. I still believe that Nick absolutely deserves to have his trial redone. I believe he deserves a fair trial. I believe he deserves to be out at some point, but not any time in the future. I think that she was let out preemptively, and she should still be in. And I definitely do believe, and I even believed even when I was quote-unquote pro, is that what we don't do is let murderers get out of prison, hop onto social media, and allow them to have millions of followers, a huge platform. She walked out of prison to 9 million followers on TikTok and 8 million on Instagram, and we're glorifying a murderer. We're glorifying a murderer. And I've stood behind that, and I've always stood behind that, and I'll always stand behind it. It's not right, and it's not okay. And there's been ploys where she's had to get off social media, and I know things about that don't even make sense. You know, there was the whole thing that somebody called her parole officer, and she had to get off social media because her parole officer told her to. I know for a fact that thousands of people had called her parole officer. That one call did not break the back. I know that thousands called that parole officer. What that was a ploy. It was all a ploy, and I can say that with all alleged confidence. Because right about that time, in swooped yet another hinky PR person with the, we're gonna get Christy and Gypsy off social media, and Gypsy did. She got off social media. She closed her TikTok. She closed her Instagram. It made TMZ news, and you know, with the show filming and got everybody amped up. Oh, why is her TikTok closed down? Her parole officer made her close it down. Oh my God, she threatened the girl on TikTok with the, you wouldn't say it to my face. And one person made a call to a parole officer and she was done. No, thousands had called. That's what I was told. Thousands had called. Why did this one call make it to where she had to close down social media? It didn't, and I don't care what anybody tells you. There was thousands of calls. This one call, it was a ploy. It was a ploy so she could shut down social media and get the spotlight and get the attention and pique the interest for the show that drops in June. For all of the divorce rumors the divorce that is happening, I was there for all of that. I know all of the stuff that went down, all the secrets that I held. I was holding secrets that made it into People magazine without me putting them there. I heard all about when Ryan supposedly went after her and she locked herself in the bathroom and how she had to leave him. And I was on the text and phone the day that they were moving her out of his house. I heard all of it, and I heard their story. And I took it as gospel. I took it as gospel, like I took Fancy's word for gospel, like I took everybody's word for gospel, because I don't want to ever believe that I'm being lied to. So I took it for gospel, and I painted him out to be this horrible person, and then lo and behold, 3 days later, here comes her ex swooping in, and now they're together, and he and Ryan's a bad guy, and she's got a restraining order against him, and here she is with her true love, and like, that's not, like, this is all in Fancy's word, it's all a distraction. We're all being red herringed here, there, and wherever. Look here, don't look here. And social media just skews your mind, because for the people that are not here, that aren't seeing whatever, we're being fed whatever from TMZ and from whatever of things happening, and we're getting half truths and half lies, and people talking about things that they have no idea what's going on. But it's like that with every case, and we don't know that. Every case is like that. We don't know what goes on. The only reason I'm here sitting here telling you any of this is because I was there, and I was seeing this, and I was being told, you know, this isn't true, and that isn't true, and this is true, and that, you know, this is true, from people on the inside, and how it changed my mind, and how it spun me in 17 directions by being a person who was being told things on separate edges of a spectrum. And so when we look at these as content creators, and we look at these cases, and we take everything at black and white, here it is, this is fact, there's always some truths with some lies, and some lies with some truths. And we need to keep that in mind as true crime creators, that not everything is freaking cut and dry. There are people involved, and real things going on, and things that don't make it into People or TMZ, evidence that doesn't make it to the court cases or the newspapers or anything else. We're just taught, report on this and talk about this, and this is what happened, and this is fact. Facts come with a lot of not fact, and I can tell you that as a fact. I know all of this sounds confuddled and jumbled and all over the place, and it truly is. But that's how the last 4 months of my life have been. I went on a wildly spinning journey of pro-gypsy, anti-gypsy, middle gypsy, while being all the time pro-truth. That's all I ever wanted. And I thought at some point I was always given promises of one day you'll know this and one day you'll know that. And, you know, now's not the time. And, you know, one day we can tell you this, and, oh, you know, I'll get the answer for that. And being strung along and breadcrumbed. And it's not that I ever wanted to talk to them for that. She reached out to me. I didn't reach out to her. I've never been one who wanted to get close to Gypsy. I don't really want to be a person who associates themselves with someone who killed their mother as a person who that is very close to a story that I could have became. And that's not the story for here or now, but that is definitely one of the reasons why I've always been attracted to the Gypsy Rose case, is as a girl who killed her mother, having that hit so close to home for me, I was always told that it was explained to me that Gypsy understood why I posted the content I did, that I had this close tie as a person that it could have happened to. And so I've always held this, regardless, when I was pro-Gypsy, things hadn't happened. Well, things had happened, but I didn't think about it. And then I started thinking about it. And then, like everything else, everything is so wild and confuddled and crazy and out of sorts. But what I'm here to say in this long half-hour ramble is that don't listen to everything as fact, and don't question everything. Everything you hear, even on the news, question it. Question why it's being put out. We were being spoon-fed about her being a victim, and she's not a victim. She's a perpetrator, and that's where it gets so weird, because in this case, we've never really seen anything like it. She was being touted as this just absolute victim. And there's more to it than that. She chose to do something for no reason when she could have walked away. She knew she could walk. She was an adult. She could have called Nick and left. She could have left, and she chose not to. This wasn't a domestic, a violent situation where she had no choice. She was an adult. She could have left. She could have disappeared. She had all
all ability to just disappear. She even said it in one of her depositions, that her main goal was to get up there after killing her mother and disappear. Well, why didn't you do that to begin with? And people can say she's a victim and people can say she's not a victim, and I'm not really here for that discussion. Okay? You can say she wasn't a victim, that she knew she could walk. You could say she was a victim because her mother was controlling. I'm not here for that. I'm here for the fact that she killed her mother. We were led to believe that there was no other choice. There was a choice. There's always choices. And she chose the wrong one. And she got off with a light sentence, and she destroyed lots of people's lives. She destroyed Nick's life. Most importantly, she destroyed Dee Dee's life. And she spun so many people in so many different directions. Social media, true crime, TikTok is a disaster. All the creators are at each other's throats. And for what? Because of a girl who did something awful, who then came out and got on social media and became a superstar, being offered free this and free that and surgeries, and came out, and you look at her comments and it's, yes, queen. No. This girl did something awful and she came out and she was a star. And that's wild. Why would you do that? And then you got to wonder, when will there be a copycat? Because what kid doesn't look and go, well, my mom's mean, my mom's controlling. I can just do this to my mom and I'll get out and I'll have 9 million followers and I'll get deals and I'll get to go here and I'll get to go there. I don't know where I'm going with any of this, but I think eventually I'll make a part 2, but for now I just wanted to say social media skews perspectives. Even the news skews perspectives. Nothing is fact. Nothing is cold hard evidence. Everything has lies and truth to it, and just keep your mind open, your ears open, and just use critical thinking skills, because it's so easy to be swayed nowadays with any type of social media or even internet usage, that we have all this information at our fingertips and we can get 8 different articles with 5 different things, and you don't even know what's true and what isn't anymore. So just remember, when you're doing true crime, that it's not always what it seems.